I want to start today by reading a quote to you. I won't tell you who said it, but you can try and guess. It goes like this. Late in the summer of 1878, our father came into the house one evening with some object partially concealed in his hands, and before we could see what it was, he tossed it in the air. Instead of falling to the floor as we expected, it flew across the room till it struck the ceiling, where it fluttered a while and finally sank to the floor. It was a little toy known to scientists as a helicopter. It was a light frame of cork and bamboo covered with paper, which formed two screws driven in opposite directions by rubber bands. A toy so delicate lasted only a short time in the hands of small boys, but its memory was abiding. Who do you think might have said that? Talking about his father who brought him a toy in 1878, a toy that he couldn't forget about. If you guessed Wilbur Wright, then you're correct. Wilbur and his brother Orville grew up and made bicycles and did a bunch of other things, but they couldn't forget that little toy that their dad brought home, the little toy that flew. And that one little toy and that memory of that toy changed everything for them and for us too. When I read that story, I thought about spiritual things right away, because I think that's exactly how spiritual things work as well. We see something that we just can't forget, something that we know we must do something about, and then it changes our life eventually. And that's certainly what happens with lots of people in Scripture. I think about a guy named Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, probably quite a rich man with lots of influence in his town. Somewhere along the line, he had met Jesus, and that thought about Jesus, that one sight of him, what he was doing and what he was like, worked on Matthew to the point that one day Jesus came and challenged him and just said, "Matthew, follow me." And he left everything and followed Jesus, became his disciple. And now we have a book of the Bible that he wrote called Matthew, his story of meeting Jesus and who Jesus was. I think about another woman, a woman who had a condition that made her unclean. She wasn't allowed to be out in public. She wasn't allowed to be out with people, and yet she saw something in Jesus, something that made her say, "I've just got to get close to him." So she fought her way through the crowds and touched the hem of his garment. And when he turned around, he looked at her and said, "Woman, your faith has healed you. Good job. You saw something and you went after it. You knew you had to get close to me. Way to go. Good job." There were guys like Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was another tax collector not really liked in town. Nobody would let him get close to Jesus. Little guy climbs a tree so he gets a peek of him. Jesus says, "I'm coming to your house." And after Jesus comes to his house, everything changes. I think that's exactly how spiritual things work. We see a little bit, and we just can't forget about it. We just keep thinking about it, and eventually we have to do something about it. And when we do something about it, when we start to investigate it more, everything changes. That's certainly how John describes his experience in his first letter that he writes. In 1 John, in the words that Eugene Peterson uses, he says this, talking about his faith and how he met God and met Jesus, he says this, "We saw it. We heard it. And now we're telling you so you can experience it along with us. This experience of communion with the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ." He says, "We lived it. We saw it. We were so happy with it. We've got to tell you about this. There's something here you need to see." Then he goes on and he says, "Our motive for writing to you is simply this. We want you to enjoy this too. Your joy will double our joy." I think that in everybody's life, they've had a moment where they've seen a glimpse of God. They've seen a glimpse of Jesus. They've seen a glimpse of something better, of what life lived in his Spirit might look like. Some people push that aside and don't do anything about it. Others chase after it because they can't forget about it. Wilbur Wright chased after something that was a memory that he couldn't let go, and it changed everything in this world. May I encourage you today, follow that little spirit, follow that thought, keep chasing after Jesus, walk with him, grow in him. It'll change not only this life, but your eternal destiny as well.